Welcome back to Alyssa's Lizards. I'm Alyssa.
Neptune the Chameleon.
Yes, feel free to give her a subscribe and a follow on Instagram as well. So she has a little bit of a backstory on what we're doing today.
So I have a chameleon, Neptune the Chameleon, but I also have a crested gecko named Pluto. And when I first got him, I got him the recommended enclosure size, but after going to NARBC in Dallas, I decided to upgrade him to the Terra 18-18-36.
Yes, 36. Yep. Her crested gecko is even more spoiled than mine, the monkey. So he is getting the same size as my giant leaf-tailed gecko actually, so he's very spoiled.
My options were new gecko or new enclosure for current gecko. So that's what we're doing. And so I wanted to give him, if I'm gonna pimp him out, I want to give him the best of the best. So I asked Alyssa's Lizards to give him a new makeover for his new enclosure.
Yes, that is one of my favorite things to do. I already have one DIY video that I've already done that you might have seen. However, it is very outdated. I have a much more different kind of style that I've been doing with my enclosures lately, and that is essentially almost a DIY tree that's more in the center or corners of the enclosure versus like an actual entire background. And so that's something I've kind of been focusing on more for some of my more recent enclosures. So that is what we did here today. So Pluto is getting a full brand new DIY custom tree, enclosure, everything. So throughout this video, I will walk you through the steps. You'll see some time lapses, things like that we've been doing. A little glimpse of our trip to Home Depot, very short, but there's that as well. So, and at the end of it, you will get to see all the plants she's doing, live plants, everything.
Bioactives, the real deal.
All the works. I will also have more videos out about bioactivity soon because I think it's awesome and really important for your animals. So there's that. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today. So I hope you enjoy, and there it goes. This is my friend Neptune the Chameleon on Instagram. What's up? Yes, so we just got back from, or well, we're just now leaving Home Depot, and we purchased all the items to redo her 18 by 18 by 36 crested gecko enclosure, and all of that consisted of a caulking gun, great stuff, gaps and cracks, insulation foam, 2 things of 100% silicone to coat everything in, and then also an actual plant so that we can have just like a little potted planter to put in the background that we're going to build. And all of that kind of totaled up to about $35-ish for all those things. And so that's pretty much the cost of just like the basic ingredients, but you do also still need cocoa fiber, which is, you know, eco earth or something like that. But then you also, of course, have to buy the actual enclosure, which she had bought at a reptile expo here in Dallas. So we went ahead and already had that. So this was more just the items that we needed for the actual builds that we're going to be doing today. So now we're going to go home and make it. Woohoo! Yay! So here we have all of the supplies that we purchased, including the caulking gun. We also bought our Great Stuff Gaps and Cracks insulation foam and 100% silicone. The plant we're not actually going to use, but we will be using the pot that it's in. Here I am sketching out all of the items and the cork bark that we have and how it's going to look in the enclosure with the plants in it. I like to do this just to really get a vision of what we're going for and how we want it to look. It really just helps the overall plan kind of fall into place a little bit better so that we can visualize everything and make sure that it's done correctly. So this is just one of my favorite little tips and tricks. You don't have to be an artist, just gives you an idea of what you're looking for. So your main next step is to kind of map out the way it's going to look from your sketch and kind of actually prop everything up and see how it's going to look once it's all laid down. So this actually helps to visualize everything even further within the actual enclosure space. So once you plan that out, you then take your insulation foam and kind of spray it underneath where the actual tree is going to go. The foam isn't very supportive once it's actually still wet within the enclosure. So you do need some items that you can prop up your cork bark with. I used candles and cups like this, and some people actually use fishing line dangled from something hung over the cage so that it can kind of be propped up that way. So that's a good option too. You want to make sure that you get all the actual gaps and cracks, just like the brand says, within each space there. And here's another cup that you kind of prop everything up with and just make sure that it's fully supported. That way it dries and hardens in the correct way. And you make sure that you fill in a lot of spaces. It's definitely better to put more in there so that you know it won't be kind of flimsy or anything like that. You want to make sure that there's plenty of foam, and it's very easy to take away foam and kind of pull it apart after the fact. You'll see me doing that later on. But the other important thing is to kind of take these branches and make actual branches out of the cork bark rounds. You can do that by just propping up the base against the glass and against the base cork bark piece, and then surrounding that branch with the insulation foam. So here is our semi-final product. So here you'll see how it's starting to harden and where the branches are all located, how they're propped up by those cups and different items just to give it a little bit more support. From here, we let it sit overnight and we let the foam cure.
Day 2.
So our next step is to start pulling apart all of the excess foam, the stuff that we don't need. You can use a knife or your bare hands. Sometimes it's easier to use your hands, but that's the main goal, is just to get to that spongy texture underneath the kind of smooth texture that it ends up hardening as. You don't want that because it's not as easy for the silicone to adhere to that. So you just want to get to that rough texture underneath and make sure that it's all taken off.
1 hour later.
So after you have tediously ripped off all of that excess foam, it's now your job to take the silicone, put it in the caulking gun, and make sure that you coat all of that insulation foam with some brown or black 100% silicone. The silicone is really hard to kind of get all over the place, so you absolutely need some gloves. I used my really terrible, cheap version of gloves and covered my hand with some Walmart trash bags. But you know, you gotta make do with what you have. So after you cover a certain area, I kind of like to do this in sections. So cover a certain area with the silicone, and then you take your Eco Earth and you put it on top of the silicone, and that really just gives it a very nice natural texture to it. So you kind of do it step by step in certain sections because you don't want the silicone drying and then you're not able to get the Eco Earth to stick to it properly. So you just kind of make your way through the enclosure and coat all of the silicone that way. And you'd make sure that you evenly distribute the Eco Earth. I just do this using a basic cup. And we then kind of just dump some of it on there and make sure that you're coating it all throughout. It's also pretty smart to prop up your enclosure and get it from different angles. There were a lot of spots with foam in it that I couldn't see when it was laying on its side. So we kind of propped it up right, checked out all the angles from that side, and then also laid it on its side and went in from the top of the cage, the screen part, and looked at some of that as well. So it definitely helps to have an additional hand here where you need it. And that way you can just make sure that you get all the foam spots, make sure that it's completely covered and safe for your animal, and make sure that it looks really natural, just like this. So here you can see that it's all coated. There's definitely some excess spots all over the glass, but don't worry, you can scrape that off later with a razor blade. So it's pretty easy cleanup, but you definitely want to make sure that you get all of that excess stuff off from the sides later on. So we are wrapped up with the actual structure build. So now we just need to decorate, get our bioactive soil ready, and we're set.
Tomorrow for sure.
So here you have it with some bioactive soil, a live snake plant, a little bit of fake plants just for the heck of it, and then also a lovely pothos vine in the top planter. These plants really just give it a great look and feel. So here, Pluto gets to see his new home. He's such a cute little guy with the prettiest Dalmatian spots, but he is in his new home and he is loving it. He had a little bit of a slip up Pluto. Try number 2. Here he goes. Much better. So he has a little bit of a difficulty on the cocoa husk on the Eco Earth, but he'll get better. Right, well, there you have it. So Pluto is all set up in his new enclosure. I'm sure he is really loving it. You'll probably hear him jumping around at night now that he has all this space. So he will love it. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Feel free to give Neptune the Chameleon a subscribe on her channel as well. She has probably some of the best chameleon advice and videos out there in my opinion. She does a ridiculous amount of research. I mean, all of us pet keepers do, but she really goes nuts, especially with chameleon specific care. So check her stuff out, and I hope you enjoyed. So that was it. I'll see you next time. Bye.